Talk Radio 77 WABC. Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today.
Well, that's the way everybody in Milwaukee is feeling. This is John Katzimatidis, and Milwaukee, a lot of patriotic people there, and I've never seen a GOP party with people feeling so good ever in their lives. I'm not going to ask Judge Weinberg. He's a Democrat. I'm going to go to Rudy Washington. Tell me how you're feeling about it.
Well, I feel good. I'm just sorry I'm not there. I've attended a few of them, and they're great. I mean, it really gets your energy going. It makes the party excited, excites the base. So I'm just sad I'm not there.
I watched every speech last night, and it was very exciting. They were exceptional, and I really felt good about it. And let's go to Milwaukee to Rita Cosby. Rita, you're there on the scene. How do you feel?
Oh, it's incredibly emotional, John. And tonight is going to be a blockbuster. This is day 3 of the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee. Tonight's theme, by the way, John, is Make America Strong Once Again. Big focus on foreign policy. And some of the highlights tonight, of course, J.D. Vance, who was picked as the running mate, of course, for President Trump. He is going to be doing his first official speech after being chosen. It's going to be enormous. We're going to hear from Donald Trump Jr., Doug Burgum, and Peter Navarro is speaking. He's going to join us later in the show. He just got out of prison in Miami, and he's going to join us live at the end of this hour. You don't want to miss it.
Did he pass Secret Service credentials and everything and got into the
It took him a couple extra hours, but he got here.
Well, you want to know something? I think he got screwed. I am happy he's out, and it's time to, move on.
I don't think I know he got screwed.
Well, I know he got screwed.
I do, too.
Listen, if you were a person in Peter Navarro's position, you go to jail. If you were a person in the other party, guess what? You get credentials, go to the White House. What do you say, Judge Weinberg?
You mean like the Homeland Security Secretary who did the very same thing Navarro did? I mean,
what about Hunter? Really? What about Hunter Biden?
I mean, give me.
What about A.G. Garland, guys? A.G.
Right.
Garland. I mean, give me a break. Who's defying it right now?
Exactly.
It's outrageous.
We got to bring the rule of law back to the United States of America. Otherwise, people are just very, very disappointed. And I understand everybody that Schiff is being influenced. Trying to influence President Biden to bow out.
He told him, Schiff told Biden to get out. Now, let me ask you this question. You think Schiff did that on his own, or is that coming through Pelosi? Because Schiff is Pelosi's guy.
Well, that's that. And I understand Senator Schumer wants to push
the Democrat convention back.
How can you do that? Back where? I mean, further out or further closer?
Well, Judge, was it the convention or the drop-dead date of August 7th?
No, the drop-dead date is controlled by Ohio law. So the fact is, according to Ohio law, if you don't have a designee and a nominated presidential candidate, you can't have him on the ballot in the Ohio election. So they were under enormous pressure there.
All right, let's go to Milwaukee, and let's go to Rita Cosby, and understand you have Congressman Turner there.
Yes, I do. And, John, here we are live at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. And joining me is none other than the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Turner. I can't think of a better person to be talking to than you today, Mr. Chairman, here at the RNC. Of course, intelligence is the big deal. You guys just got briefed a little bit ago. I'm not going to ask you to reveal, but I will ask you about some of the reports that are out there tonight about the shooter. that apparently the guy who tried to kill President Trump just a few days ago, 30 minutes before, according to a news report, was seen with a rangefinder, suspicious. They took a picture of the guy, and then he gets to take a shot on our President of the United States. Your thought, Mr. Chairman?
Well, the information that we're learning at this time is absolutely outrageous. The failures of security, all of which were obvious, placing Donald Trump at risk, resulting in him getting shot. When you also factor in that of the known, existing, and continuous threat from Iran and its proxies and terrorist groups and organizations that have come across this open border as a result of Biden's policies that are also a threat to President Trump, it is just unfathomable and really totally a miracle that Donald Trump survived.
Yeah, it is incredible. And what is going to happen with the Secret Service director? You've called for her to resign, correct? Just a few minutes ago, I believe.
The Speaker's called for resign. I've joined with him. This is clearly she has to leave in order to be able to redo the organization and its security posture. But I've also called for, we need an independent assessment right now of the Secret Service's plans and processes, its protocols, as it protects both former President Donald Trump and President Biden, because clearly they're failing in every area.
Yeah, they clearly are failing. And what do you make of the fact that so far no one has been held accountable? And I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I feel like that has been par for the course with this administration. The border, nobody's been held accountable. Afghanistan withdrawal, no one held accountable. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about it tonight here at the RNC. But your reaction, do you have any confidence that there will be some accountability coming from this White House?
No, we're going to have to change who the president is and who's in the White House. I've said that Donald Trump can stand on that stage and say if they can't protect me, they can't protect this country, and if they can't protect this country, they can't protect you. They need him to be able to make America safe again. Director Wray of the FBI has publicly stated that there are people in this country that have crossed the border that have affiliations with international terrorist groups and organizations that pose a risk, highest level, he says, since 9/11, for a terrorist attack in the United States. And certainly we know, because they have said it publicly, that Donald Trump, his former cabinet members, are all at risk of being targeted as a result of the killing of Soleimani. This is unexplainable, and it's outrageous.
It is outrageous. I have to ask you, you brought up Soleimani, of course, the targeting. You have now a clear threat from the Iranian regime. That's an act of war if something were to happen, clearly. I mean, if there was a clear... What information do you have about how significant this threat is? Because this was supposed to be beefed up security at the Secret Service as a result of that. I mean, I can't imagine what non-beefed up security looks like, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, well, in our briefing, I asked that Director Wray, he has already publicly stated of this threat from Iran, that it was existing, continuous, and known, and that it went directly to a threat to the former president, to Donald Trump. And I asked him, why wouldn't that already have been baked in to the security posture there? And he agrees. It absolutely, it's unthinkable that of the condition that the Secret Service has degraded that placed the president at risk.
Yeah, it is absolutely astounding. By the way, we also have with us here Ben Carson. Dr. Ben Carson just joined us, who is here, of course, former HUD secretary, incredible neurosurgeon. Dr. Carson, what an honor. I'm so glad you were here live at the RNC, Katz and Cosby. John is back in New York. We also have Judge Richard Weinberg, Rudy Washington, and, of course, you see by my side the great chairman of the House Intel Committee, Mike Turner. Secretary Carson, first of all, your reaction to what we are talking about with this major security breakdown.
Well, obviously, it's very worrisome, Rita. If one of the top security agencies in this country cannot do basic surveillance of an area and keep somebody within easy sniper range under control, under surveillance, and when they knew this a half an hour before the first shot, why didn't they immediately secure the president? Wouldn't that be the logical thing? A third grader would know that. I don't understand it, quite frankly. Can they be that inept, or is there something more sinister going on?
Yeah, can we rule out, and I'm not going to have you violate your, at this point, does it look like this man acted alone, that it was just a lone kind of crazy guy inspired? Do we have anything to indicate?
We don't. I mean, at this time, there's no indication that it's broader, but at the same time, the investigation is ongoing, so we don't know where it will lead. But I will tell you this to Dr. Ben Carson's statement. The fact that the former president was allowed to take that stage with what they knew already was occurring and what had been reported both to the police and the Secret Service, it is just astounding and clearly, rise to the level of having actively put his life at risk, which we all saw.
Dr. Carson, what's amazing, too, some of the other details, and you know this all too well, Chairman Turner, that we are also hearing that the parents of this guy called up the police and said, my son's missing, we're worried. Then we're hearing again about the 30 minutes beforehand. We know on the roof today that they found a cell phone and they found a detonator. There were explosive materials in the car, in the house. I mean, the writing was everywhere. There needs to be some accountability, Dr. Carson.
There always seems to be all this evidence that comes up after these incidents that could have been utilized in a much more effective way. And it tells us that we really need an overhaul of some of our security measures and some of our systems. And that's not going to happen, as Chairman Turner said, until you change the leadership at the top. You need somebody who really is dedicated to cleaning the thing up and making it efficient. This is the United States of America. We can put man on the moon, but we can't protect the president in an open field. Give me a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Rudy Washington, I understand the former deputy mayor of New York has a question for you.
Yes, Congressman, I know it's not under the purview of the federal government, but the local police officer that went up the side of the building and had this guy turn his rifle on him, I mean, why didn't he just let off a round? If he had let off a round in the air, the snipers would have taken this guy right out. Have you guys questioned him?
Yeah, so we're going to get all the details of that. I mean, I've certainly heard the reports also. And it's very, very disturbing that so many times that he was engaged or identified and nothing was done. And that could have resulted in the death of Donald Trump. Now, there is intended to be a hearing next week at the Oversight Committee, of which I'm a member.
She's being subpoenaed, right? The
yes,
director.
The director has been subpoenaed.
Because she would not come voluntarily, is my understanding.
Right, and I can't believe that she would violate that subpoena at this time, knowing how just critical this issue is to our country. I mean, the need for Congress to provide oversight where the Secret Service is failing fairly clearly, even in their review in this matter.
Yeah, it's astounding. By the way, I also want to switch gears with both of you guys. Some other big breaking news as we are here live at the Republican National Convention. This is for you, Dr. Carson. President Biden is saying medical condition could prompt him to drop out if doctors came to me. That is what the president is saying. It's sort of symbolizing. It comes as there are polls out there that say that 70% of Americans want him to drop out. Your thoughts as one of the top neurosurgeons in the world?
Well, they know that there's a problem. That's the reason that they won't subject him to a cognitive exam. These things can be ironed out in a matter of minutes. We can find out pretty quickly whether he's capable or not. He obviously is not capable, and they're obviously hiding it. And that's a bigger problem, because that means that they are willing to sacrifice the safety of the nation. This man has access to the nuclear codes. He's in charge of our military. He's responsible for the safety of the people. You know, he has completely opened our southern border, let all kind of people in here. If the terrorists aren't taking advantage of that, they're not very good terrorists.
Yeah, and which is really frightening. And you talk about the border, Dr. Carson. Chairman Turner, my goodness, you know how vulnerable we are. I can't even imagine the intel reports that you see all the time. How vulnerable are we right now? And that's why I think many Americans are cheering loudly for the Republican Party, because they're talking about protecting our homeland. They're talking about protecting our homes. I think that's part of the reason you're skyrocketing in the polls.
So, I mean, the FBI director, Director Wray, has openly and publicly stated that there are individuals who have come across the southern border who are in the United States currently, who are affiliated with terrorist groups and organizations, including the proxies from Iran that are here, that are placing Americans at risk. He has said we're at the highest threat level since 9/11.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, guys, I just want to thank both of you real quick before we go. Tonight is going to be a big night. We're going to hear from J.D. Vance. It's his first speech since he has been picked as the running mate. Dr. Carson, your thoughts of tonight, and also seeing President Trump. When he walked in the hall, I had tears in my eyes.
Well, it was really quite an emotional thing because he symbolizes resilience. And this is the American spirit, the can-do attitude. We're not going to let this get us down, and he symbolizes that. And this is so much what we need right now. And I think J.D. Vance tonight will amplify that same attitude, talk about things that are logical and that make sense, and not concentrate on personalities of your political opponents. We need to get to that place in this country, and the media needs to remind either side when they deviate from that and they start talking about people rather than policies, that they need to be called out on it.
By the way, here's a great American story, too, of course, coming from rags to riches. And he reminds me of another guy I know, Dr. Ben Carson, who had a similar incredible story. Chairman Turner, your thoughts of how important tonight before we let you guys go?
It's very important, but the greatest part is we're going to have a fellow Ohioan standing there proudly representing our state.
Yeah, good choice for VP?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, guys, both of you, thank you. What an honor to have both of you here. It's an action-packed with that. We have the whole row waiting to see you guys. We are sending it back to you.
I just want to point out to Dr. Ben Carson, I watched his talk last night, and on a scale of 1 to 10, Dr. Carson, you were an 11.
Wow. And if you saw his smile, you'd say 13.
Thank you, John.
What a blessing to have both of you guys. Dr. Carson, thank you. And Chairman Mike Turner, what an honor to have both of you guys. It's really been a gift. John, sending it back to you in New York.
Well, New York here, and we're going to be taking a break. And when we come back, we're going to go back to Milwaukee. And I understand we have John Solomon is going to be interviewing with Rita Cosby, and he always has breaking news. Let us know if we should hit the breaking news button, Rita. Okay, let's go to break. Let's go to break.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
This is John Catsimatidis back in New York. And, guys, before we shift to Milwaukee, you had a comment of some breaking news.
John, it's absolutely incredible. It's now being reported that the Secret Service knew before President Trump took the stage, went up to the podium, that there was an active threat. So why in God's name would they allow him to get up there on the podium until that threat was neutralized?
Rudy?
And I was saying that they spotted the young kid with a rangefinder. And they let him in. They picked it up on a magnetometer, and they let him in still. And then he walked back out. I mean,
it doesn't sound very smart.
No. I mean, just common sense would say, question this kid and hold him and find out why you got a rangefinder.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
What they did after all this happened, I told you what happened yesterday. When we were leaving Milwaukee Airport Monday night about 10 o'clock at night, they put us through hell, and we're the ones leaving.
I know. But look, the problem is, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but when you have that kind of negligence, that kind of ineptitude, that kind of malpractice,
I think it sounds like just plain stupidity versus
corruption
or anything like that. Okay, let's go back to Milwaukee and with Rita Cosby, and I think you'll be interviewing John Solomon from JustTheNews.com.
And joining us now with some big breaking news is the great investigative journalist, John Solomon, the founder of Just the News. John, it is great for both of us to be here at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. You have some big scoops on the investigation into that gunman and the security failures. Fill us in.
Well, we were wondering, will the Secret Service director ultimately testify? And in fact, he's going to be compelled to testify. A subpoena was just issued by Congress in the House, and it's going to require her to testify next week. It's also going to require her to start bringing key documents. Congress has not been able to get any meaningful information in the first 4 or 5 days. James Comer and the Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mark Green had enough. They issued the subpoena, and we will begin to see both testimony and documents unless there's a claim of executive privilege or something that comes down the road. Meanwhile, we're learning a lot more about just how many warning signs law enforcement in general and the Secret Service specifically had. We know that the shooter had been up and down on the roof several times, that an officer had tried to confront him, but he fell while reaching for his gun. But at that moment, they knew he was armed. No communication that we can tell thus far came from that site back up to the rim where the president was, which means the agents on the stage weren't notified that they should move the president ahead of the shooting. There's going to be significant amounts of failure. There are multiple failure points, and we don't have all the facts yet. But when you hear the Secret Service saying this was a major failure, you know it's a major failure.
So let's talk about also some other big news that came out today, John Solomon. Everybody's talking about it here in Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention. The fact that the parents of the shooter called local authorities that day. Explain.
They were worried that their son was up to something, didn't know quite what it was, and made an initial phone call. And couldn't get information, and apparently local police and the Secret Service didn't connect that phone call to the activities they were watching on the roof. Again, all of the different aspects of this communication system are broken. And by the way, if you go back to look at some of the reporting I did in 2015, there was a major investigation by Jason Chaffetz in 2015 that warned that the Secret Service was drifting into this territory, not communicating clearly with local police who were their partners, not resourcing events properly enough, taking risks that they previously in earlier decades of the Secret Service would not have taken. All of these warning signs were on the front line in 2015. Nearly all the recommendations that Congress made in that report, almost none of them got implemented. Fast forward to the Biden administration, you get a new director. The new director is big on diversity. Nothing wrong with diversity, but it can't come at the expense of the mission.
Yes, safety is the priority.
Yeah, they're a zero failure agency, and they had a major failure. Over the last several months, there have been numerous warning signs that the Secret Service was in trouble, including its own agents circulating a petition trying to get Congress's attention, saying our agency is in distress. We need your help. Get involved. That prompted Congress in May, James Comer, to send the first letter. The Secret Service didn't engage Congress. This terrible episode occurs now. They're going to have to engage Congress because they've been subpoenaed. You look at the things that agents were talking about back in May. They were stretched thin. Many were working 4, 5, 10 days in a row past their normal 5-day work week. They're exhausted. They're stretched thin. They were increasingly shrinking the perimeter that the Secret Service would declare was their protection area. And I think when we find it out later, we're going to find out that the reason that shooting perch wasn't covered by the Secret Service was they didn't have enough bodies, so they simply drew a perimeter that was smaller, and they left the shooting perch wide open for someone to do what they did.
What are your sources telling you about this threat from Iran, too? Because there are reports that they even beefed up security around the president. Yeah. I can't imagine what it would be like if they didn't beef up security. But how serious was that threat? How much more did they beef it up? And boy, I can't imagine how skeletal they must have been before the beef up.
I'm not sure we saw much of the beefing up at that event. I think it probably was more in around the president's personal detail, the very tight detail. But there are 4 rings of really coverage that the Secret Service does. The body, then the mid area there, then the far ring, and then the snipers. The snipers were at full capacity. The mid ring, that third ring out, the one that it looks like they designated that someone out to police who may not have been as experienced at this. The second and first ring had been enhanced to protect the president in case of an immediate threat. Iran has wanted to pay Donald Trump back for the execution of Soleimani, the great terrorist, and these threats have been getting louder. We saw 2 years ago a plot against President George W. Bush. Similar, Iran actually got across the border before the guy was captured. So these threats are very real.
Very serious. Yeah. John Solomon, keep us posted with all the breaking news. It's great to see you here in Milwaukee.
Same. Good to be with you, Rita.
Wow, that was some interview with John Solomon, Rita. And it is, I mean, Iran, you guys are talking about it at the end. Iran, the biggest loser if President Trump gets elected is Iran. And Iran, so far, our commander-in-chief in Washington has done nothing about the Houthis, the Hezbollah, or the Hamas.
That's absolutely right.
Total failure. And they're all hired by Iran.
And we gave them the money to hire them, John.
And we gave them the money to hire them. We gave them the money to become rich again. And now they're, let's take a, where do we go? We're going to go to just the news, or we're going to go to Goya headline news. Let's go to Lisa Ritchie.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And here's the latest hot news headlines from Goya. All eyes will be on J.D. Vance tonight as he headlines the primetime speakers on day 3 of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. The nation's first millennial party nominee will formally introduce himself to the voting public, touching on his humble beginnings, his journey to become an Ohio senator, and now vice presidential nominee. The shooter who attempted to assassinate former President Trump was reportedly spotted by law enforcement almost a half an hour before the shots were fired. A source confirmed one of Beaver County's team saw a suspicious man on the roof, took a picture, and called it in. 26 minutes after the picture was taken, shots rang out, killing one rally attendee and injuring Trump. The Department of Homeland Security will investigate the security at Donald Trump's Pennsylvania rally. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle will appear at a House hearing on Monday as the agency is facing intense scrutiny following the assassination attempt and reported security lapses. And one of President Biden's staunchest supporters has joined the list of officials asking him to drop out of the 2024 race. California Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff says he has serious concerns if Biden can beat former President Trump. 19 other Democrats have asked Biden to step down. And those are the hot headlines from Goya.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
This is John Catsimatidis in New York, and I understand Rita Cosby has the former governor of the state of Wisconsin there, Scott Walker, a good friend. And Rita, you'll take it away with Governor Walker.
Absolutely. And John, we have quite a crowd here as we are in Milwaukee right here in the Panther Arena, which is part of the whole Pfizer Center, where the big action. This is night 3 of the RNC. And I am joined here by Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin. Governor, thank you for having us here in your great state. It's been incredible. This is amazing. There's such excitement in the air. What does it mean to you to have this, especially at this moment where, boy, all the polls, including Wisconsin polls, are showing the president's up?
It's huge. I mean, it's huge. One, we just love having you all here. We hope you have the cheese curds and everything else good about Wisconsin.
I haven't tried that yet.
Oh, you got to go in the Convention Fest just down the way. There's deep fried cheese curds. They're awesome.
Sounds really healthy.
It's kind of stuff, John, you should be having in your grocery stores. It's awesome stuff. Cheese curds. At least get the fresh ones. But Katz, it's good to be with you as well. But no, it's huge. Absolutely huge for us to have everybody here. We're excited about that. But politically, I mean, we were already heading in the right direction. Polls for the last couple months had the president up by a few percentage points. Of course, as you know, here in Wisconsin, that's significant because the margins are always tight. I won 3 elections, and blowouts for me were 52% of the vote. But it's because of the issues. People are concerned about affordability when they go up to fill their grocery cart, their gas tank, when they're paying their mortgage or paying their rent. It's so much higher than it was 4 years ago under Donald J. Before Biden, when Donald J. Trump was in. And people are noticing, particularly in the suburbs. Voters who voted for him in 2016, some of them moved away from him in 2020 because of tone. They regret that. There's buyer's remorse, and they're coming back home.
And speaking of which, this has been a unified Republican Party. I mean, we saw last night, we saw Nikki Haley, we saw Ron DeSantis. It's an amazing moment. Tonight we're going to hear from J.D. Vance. Yeah. And this is going to be a biggie. It's his first official speech. Everyone can't wait to see it. Right now, it looks like it's going to be J.D. Vance against Kamala Harris. I say right now, Governor, because as everyone's buzzing, one of the headlines today coming from our current commander-in-chief, President Biden, saying, quote, a medical condition could prompt him to drop out if doctors came to me. Do you think we're going to see a J.D. Vance Kamala Harris, or do you think we're going to see a Donald Trump Kamala Harris?
Well, I look forward to either of those because it would be a knockout. Because remember, it's the problems with Joe Biden are not because of dementia, health condition, whatever they want to claim it. They're because his ideas suck. I mean, the ideas that have driven up the cost of living, that not just inflation, but high prices. Harris, her number one job, according to Joe Biden, other than replace him if he wasn't there, was the border. We have a full-scale invasion that isn't just about the border. It's about fentanyl killing, 16, 17, 18-year-olds in places like we're at here in Wisconsin or across the country. It's about public safety concerns. They're just bad on the issues. And for voters the most recent public poll here in Wisconsin reliably shows those issues are not important to conservatives. They're important to swing voters, and it's really important for people like me and others who support the president to tie that to whether it's Harris, Gavin Newsom, anybody else who wants to run the ideas are just as bad.
You know, Governor Walker, everybody talking, of course, about that terrible assassination attempt against the president. And yet, you know, the Democrats came out and said that they would tone down the rhetoric. Yet an ad just came out with Kamala Harris blasting J.D. Vance. It sounds like the kumbaya is over. What do you say about that? I mean, to me, it's so unseemly. It feels like there was not any of this brief unification period that we heard, at least from the Democratic side.
Oh, you're so right. It's so appropriate to talk about here in Wisconsin because I had signs with targets. I was in the crosshair of the targets in posters and signs. I had my Hitler mustache put on banners when they tried to protest and run over my state capitol when they tried to recall us. So I, like a lot of others, in fact, in some ways, I was the Midwest version of Donald Trump before Donald Trump, just slightly different in tone. But they've gone after him personally because they can't win on the issues. That's what it's all about. They can't win if you compare which policies work better when you look side by side as to how much better America was under 4 years of Donald Trump versus 4 years of Joe Biden. There is no comparison. And I hope there's at least some out there, whether it's in the media or social media, that call them out on this. I hope tonight as well with J.D. Vance, you know, his book is rushed to the top of the bestseller list again. I think it's 1,000 times more people are viewing that adaptation of that book on Netflix. I watched that, Toinette, and I watched it in the past.
It's an amazing life story.
Well, I hope people understand with addiction, cuts across party lines, cuts across every demographic. Drug addiction with his mother and his family, abject poverty. This guy rose out of all of that, and Donald Trump is the kind of guy who speaks to families like that who feel forgotten by all the politicians in Washington.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you his story. I can't wait to hear it more tonight. I've met him. It's a very impressive story. We love your state, and I'm going to try cheese curds, and we'll see if we can get them in some of the Gristedes there too as well. John's listening. So, John, what do you think? Can we get him in Gristedes?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we'll put a special on him.
I love it.
John,
a convention special. I love it.
Convention RNC special. Governor Walker, we love you. Thank you for being
here. Good to be with you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, John.
John, back to you.
Now, back into New York, I believe we have Greg Jarrett calling in. He's an author, a Fox News contributor, and I think he's a former U.S. attorney. Greg Jarrett, are you on?
Yeah, no, I'm not a former U.S. attorney.
No, okay, I missed that.
It's just a great legal mind. Just a great legal mind.
When Rita's in New York, that's usually Rita's job to read it through. Tell us, what's on your mind today? There's so many things happening. Where do we want to start?
Well, you know, Jack Smith, the special counsel, just filed a notice of appeal today to the 11th Circuit. He doesn't like the decision of Judge Aileen Cannon, the federal judge, throwing out entirely the classified documents case in Florida. So predictably, it'll go to an appellate court, and ultimately it may go to the United States Supreme Court. And, you know, I think that Judge Cannon's decision, 93 pages, I've read it several times, is well-reasoned and will be met at the highest court in the land with a friendly view.
Judge Weinberg?
Greg, good to talk to you. Let me ask you this question. Aren't the same concerns in terms of the lack of authority of this appointment by Garland of Smith, don't they also govern the D.C. case before Judge Chutkan?
Well, you would think they would. The same reasoning applies. However, a Florida district court judge has no force and effect, and it's not binding on a Washington D.C. judge.
Don't you think she has to think very hard about what she does in D.C.?
She doesn't think at all. That's
okay.
her problem. Judge Tanya Chutkan, she's already made up her mind that she loves Smith's case. She hates Donald Trump. All of her rulings have been against the former president and in favor of Smith. This is yet another Judge Juan Merchan type case in which Trump can't possibly get a fair trial in Washington, D.C. But look, that case has already stalled in Washington by the two recent Supreme Court decisions over the immunity issue and the improper use of an obstruction statute. So that case is going nowhere fast.
Rudy Washington?
Yeah, you know, Greg, I'm just surprised at the hypocrisy of it all. I mean, we can have a judge give a jury charge with three different, what is it, Judge?
Column A, column B.
Yeah,
We're talking about the Mershon trial.
Yeah.
Column
That's
A,
fine.
column B, and column C. It violates the unanimity rule. By the way, there was a great column by a mutual friend, Andrew McCarthy. He said if Biden was smart and was doing the right thing, he would call upon everyone to stop the lawfare and get rid of all these cases. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Andy, as always, is right. He's a friend and colleague. And, it's true that Joe Biden would gain some currency if he said, look, I want to win at the ballot box. I don't want my opponent to be defeated in courts based on what the public perceives as lawfare, the politically driven cases to delegitimize my adversary. And, so he would gain more if he were to do exactly as Andy says, direct his Department of Justice to knock it off and tell the local prosecutors the same.
Well, he can't vanquish his foe any other way but through weaponry. He has nothing to run on.
Yeah, and that's exactly why the lawfare began, because, the Biden Department of Justice received the instructions pretty clear in a leaked New York Times story that Biden wanted Trump prosecuted. And shortly thereafter, Garland appointed Jack Smith. And he knew that Smith would never be Senate approved because Smith has this notorious track record of shamelessly manipulating the law to bring politically driven prosecutions. So Garland said, well, I'm going to circumvent the Constitution. I'm going to target Trump with manufactured charges, and Jack Smith's going to be my ruthless mob enforcer, and that's what he did.
And that was supposed to show independence of the White House and the Justice Department from these wrongful prosecutions, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, it was a clever charade. The White House deliberately leaked the story of the New York Times that Joe Biden wanted Trump prosecuted. And, so Garland got his marching orders. And, it gave him plausible deniability because Biden didn't tell him directly. Presidents have done this in the past. They want something done. They really ethically can't do it by direct order. So they leak it to the media. And, of course, whoever has to take action reads about it and takes action. And that's what Garland did.
Well, Greg Jarrett, thank you for bringing everybody up to date. And it is horrible what's going on. And we need the rule of law to...
and to be even-handed.
Yes.
Even-handed.
Yeah,
well, I accept your nomination as U.S. Attorney, John. Thank you very much.
If I was president, guaranteed you'd be U.S. Attorney.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Let's go back to Milwaukee now. I believe Rita has Michael Goodwin on, star reporter for the New York Post.
And joining us now here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at the scene of the Republican National Convention, we are here with Michael Goodwin, the great Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Post columnist. Michael, you wrote a big story about this is now the working class party, that Republicans now own it. Explain.
Yes, thank you, Rita. It is really amazing how the tone has changed. I mean, I've been to a number of Republican conventions and certainly familiar with the party. And this is a different party now. This is Donald Trump's party. And what he started in 2016 with the Rust Belt support that he got has now, I think, sort of taken over the party. This is what the party is looking to as its prime constituency. And you see it in the choice of speakers. You see the diversity that has been involved in the selection of speakers. The head of the Teamsters Union spoke. Now, it was a strange experience. I think a lot of the delegates weren't sure whether to boo or cheer a lot of O'Brien's comments. But the mere fact that you have a union head speaking to a Republican National Convention, I think, is a big moment. And it's just everywhere you look, there is this sense that the party has been remade to fit the idea that Donald Trump had in 2016, that got him elected in 2016, that this party should stand for working class Americans. Then it was just the Rust Belt primarily, and he won the 3 key states to win the election against Hillary Clinton. But now, for example, his idea that tips for restaurant workers and others should not be taxed. I mean, that I think it sounds, that's interesting, that's cute. No. There are a lot of people who are really moved by that. So again, it's part of this pattern that the working class, the Republican Party, the party of big business, of Wall Street, is now becoming a working class party, a working class dominated party. That's a big, big change, and it's all because of Donald Trump.
And Michael Goodwin, you talked about the Rust Belt. Of course, Donald Trump picked as his running mate, he picked Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, also a young guy, 39 years old. Do you think that also clearly comes into play with the working everyman story? And you think about also, as we will hear tonight from J.D. Vance, this is a story of rags to riches, as he profiled in his book, Hillbilly Elegy.
Yes, I think it fits in perfectly. In fact, when he made the announcement about J.D. Vance as his running mate, Trump said that he would be representing and working for, and he basically assigned him to the Rust Belt states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. That's where Vance presumably will be spending the bulk of his campaign time, as senator from Ohio. There won't be presumably a lot of Congress in the later part of the year as everybody goes home for elections. And so I think that's where you'll find J.D. Vance. And he's a very articulate spokesman for the populist policies, for the America First policies of Donald Trump. He wasn't always, but he is now. And I think you're going to see a real emphasis on those states. And look, the other thing I would point out, Rita, is that I'm sure you've picked this up too, that there's a real enthusiasm here. There's a confidence that, in part because of Joe Biden's problems, and in part because of Donald Trump's survival of the assassination attempt, there's almost an exuberance here that victory is practically guaranteed in November.
And Michael, we just have a few seconds left. You just teed it up where I was going to go, because there's word today, of course, that Biden has said, quote, if a medical condition could prompt him to drop out, that's a possibility. Quote, if doctors came to me, this comes as polls are showing that 70% of Americans are saying that President Biden should drop out. And we've got Adam Schiff, who's a very important Democrat, saying it's time for him to drop out. Where do you think that's headed? Because, here we are at the RNC. They're very unified. The Democrats seem to be trying to push Biden out every which way but loose. Do you think it's going to happen?
I do. I predicted, Rita, after the debate, the night of the debate where he bombed, I said that he would be gone within a month. Now, I had my doubts along the way as he rebuffed the calls, but since then, of course, the money has slowed down. As you said, the number of Democrats coming out of the closet saying, get out of our way, Joe, you're dragging us all down. And then finally, I think the assassination attempt on President Trump, the rollback, the throwing out of the court case, all of these things are contributing to this sense of enthusiasm on the Republican side. It's almost a giddiness. You can feel it here. Yeah. And I, of course, contrast that with the Democrats who are gloomy and want to get rid of Biden. So I think that the weight is shifted again now, and I think it's more likely than not that Biden will drop out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. Michael Goodwin, really great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Wow, what an interview, Rita. And now we're going to go to a break, but we got Peter Navarro, fresh out of prison in Miami, like 12 hours ago. And he is at the GOP convention sitting with Rita right now. And we're going to have an exclusive interview with Peter Navarro. And let's go to break, and we'll come right back and go to Milwaukee.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, we're back in New York, and we're going to go back to Milwaukee. Peter Navarro completed his 4 months in prison and sitting exclusively with Rita Cosby. Rita, take over.
And we are back here at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And one of the big speakers tonight is going to be Peter Navarro, who has just left prison a few hours ago. Incredible what happened to him, and he will be one of the big speakers, of course, former Trump advisor, very close to President Trump. Also has a new book out called The New MAGA Deal, and it's called, you can go to newmagadeal.com. Peter Navarro, first of all, congratulations for getting out of prison literally a few hours ago. What does it feel like to be here at the convention?
You can't make that up in terms of the drama of it. But I don't think it was an accident. Them letting me out like later in the week. They didn't think I could make it here, but I got here, and Johnny Katz is my main man. I would see some of your stuff through the New York Post that would circulate through the prison.
We've been praying for you, I'm telling you.
I know, I do appreciate it, but I did get out of prison in Miami this morning. I'm here in Milwaukee with a very simple message, the speech tonight. If we don't control our government, their government will control us. If we don't control all three branches of our government, legislative, executive, judicial, their government will put some of us, like me and Steve Bannon, in prison, and they will control the rest of us. I'm going to flesh that out. I mean, if you think about how I got in prison, it involved all three branches of our government controlled by Democrats weaponizing our, as the president loves to say, injustice system. Of course, the other thing I'm doing, the new MAGAdeal.com, that came out on Monday. They wouldn't let me out of prison for that.
You were in prison on your birthday, Peter. I can't believe that.
Yeah, 75th birthday in prison. It was a kind of a surreal experience. But the new MAGA deal, my mission between now and November is to use the new MAGA deal basically as a offensive, defensive weapon against the Bidenites who are going to try to portray the Trump folks, Make America Great Again movement is somehow far out there, when in fact, as I show in the new MAGA deal, it's the most centrist movement there is. It's fair trade, manufacturing here in America rather than out in communist China. It's securing our borders, and it's an end to endless wars. And the one thing I want to say here right now, because I couldn't be more pleased with J.D. Vance being the vice president nominee, because he's going to be the anti-Kamala. Kamala was given one job in 4 years. One job. You remember what that was?
Supposedly border.
Supposedly border. She went down there, took one sniff of that smell coming across the Rio Grande, turned tail and said, not my job. And then 8 million people came in to murder and rape people. You got drug cartels, human traffickers. You got a flood of illiterate illegal aliens flooding our labor markets, and Islamic terrorists and communist Chinese spies. That's on Kamala. J.D. Vance is the heartland, and he's going to be the key to Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and all of the states around this country that manufacture, because he was there, boots on the ground, suffering. His family, his friends, his colleagues.
He understands.
He understands. I was at 30,000 feet studying this back in 2001, 2, and 3, wondering what happened. He was on the ground. And so I never met him, but we have a common bond in that. We're like two sides of the same coin, but he's the lived experience, and I'm kind of the analyst up here.
Well,
that's a problem.
You're a lot bigger than an analyst. I got to say, everybody, we are talking here on Katz and Cosby with Peter Navarro. Just got out of prison. Peter, you talked about the lawfare that we've all seen. Boy, do you epitomize it. I want to remind everybody because, of course, you were there for defying the subpoena for the January 6th committee.
Yes.
Didn't want to turn over the documents. So many questions about the, obviously, about the validity of that whole investigation. It's been crazy. The fact you had to serve 4 months in prison. What's your message also as we're seeing now all these cases falling apart against President Trump? Yeah. But boy, you really epitomized the way you were handled was shocking.
I actually think my case is the quintessential archetype of weaponization of the injustice system, because for more than 50 years, the Department of Justice says that what I did was not illegal, it was my duty. George Washington's doctrine of executive privilege and the constitutional separation of powers says, and the Department of Justice says, that if Congress comes to call to a senior presidential advisor, my duty was to tell him to go pound sand. And that's what I did. My duty. And, I mean, I've seen this whole justice system now. It doesn't work. I mean, there's no reason I should have been sent to prison before my appeal of this case.
And they rushed after you. They rushed after you, guns blazing at the airport, too.
Well, that's the Federal Bureau of Intimidation. I mean, one of the lines in the speech has to do, in Trump's America, you didn't have to worry about the Federal Bureau of Intimidation looking over your shoulder after you went to a school board meeting and spoke up or kneeled down in church without a Fauci mask. This is, I mean, it's the rot is deep. I think Americans understand now that we can't have a system of injustice like that.
Well,
it's an election issue.
I'll tell you, if people have tears in their eyes seeing you here, it's really great to see you. Thank goodness you're okay, Peter.
I'm doing
great.
And I
can't wait to hear you speak tonight. You are going to get a rousing applause
We don't
here.
bend, we don't break in Trumpland.
Well, bravo to you.
Okay.
I can't wait to see your speech tonight. We're going to be cheering you on. Thank you
Give
so
my best
much.
to Johnny Katz, will you?
You know I will. He's
All right.
listening.
All right, brother.
Wow, what an interview. And I can't believe it. I mean, 4 months in jail. Rita didn't ask him how the food was.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance.
How was the food, Rita?
It was busy. He just got whisked off, John. Right now, when we were doing the interview,
we have to break before Mark Levin yells at all of us.
Can't have that.
What do we all stand for?
Truth,
justice, and the American way.